This email is from Jordan.
Hey, Jordan.
And it's the last thing from the end of yesterday's show. He says, Rob, the ending of Monday's show really jarred me. The thought that Israel is shutting down again was terrifying. We can't let that happen here. I realize here it's state by state, but as you mentioned, Joe Biden has said if there was another wave in America and he was president, he'd shut the whole country down. Although I'm not sure if a president can even do that.
Right.
Either way, are we going to keep living like this? Hasn't the rest of the world been ahead of us with this stuff? So if Israel is closing up again, does that mean in 2 more months we're doing the same thing? That's an interesting observation because he's right on that last part. From the very beginning of this, other parts of the world, for the most part, have been 4 to 8 weeks ahead of us. And so it does bring up the question of, is there another wave coming to the country of America, let alone various states, especially as we get into fall and the flu and how we'll react? Do you remember back in the middle of this mess, we got all the way through the lockdowns, and then we had the audacity to go on a summer vacation. And literally, right when we came back, July 13th of 2020, in response to an increase in cases, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued orders putting California back into full-on lockdown. So this is July 13th. This was the point at which California was being revered and hailed for controlling the virus. And morons like us were saying, California, herd immunity. We all had it back in January. Well, we know there were plenty of Californians who didn't get it based on what we went through over the last 2 months. So on July 13th, everything shut down again. Restaurants, bars, theaters, churches, malls, barbershops, all closed, all affecting the large majority of California citizens. And I read to you an op-ed piece by this guy I've never heard of named John Hinderaker because the point made at the time so much sense, and it alludes to what Jordan's talking about. He wrote, how long will these closures last? Well, presumably until the spread of the virus can be slowed and people will once again be allowed to resume some kind of social and business life, which in turn will lead to an increase in cases and will lead to another shutdown, and so on and so on. Is there any reason why this cycle will not continue into 2021, 22, and 23? So that's what he wrote in July, which everybody is now waiting to see. And Israel is the first country in the world to implement a second national lockdown. And when I got Jordan's email yesterday, I did some more research. The whole thing's pretty goddamn terrifying, to be completely candid with you, as you look around the world and you wonder what could happen in America if there's another spike, which we'll go through here.
Too many people actually, still to this day, I will see in comment sections of whatever it is that I'm reading, to this day, think we're going to get rid of it by quarantining. I know that was not how it even was originally sold. It was to slow it down. And I honestly don't know where that came from then, where everyone thought we're getting rid of it. I don't know who was saying it. I don't know whoever it was. It was someone screaming the loudest, because that just in every comment section. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? We were doing so good because we were, and you would think they would catch themselves in the middle of writing it and or saying it. We were doing so good. We all were quarantined, and then the minute we weren't, we had more cases. Duh. Think it through, but they're not. And they don't think any of that through. And because they're still to this day think we're going to get rid of it by hiding out. And then when we don't, we need to hide out again. Oh my gosh, here we are. We're opening. Oh, more cases. Oh, hide again. So to me, as long as there are more Karens, and there are with this damn thing, I could totally see us going back. And of course, a couple things to add to that. There's this element of the population that believe cases equals death. That if you get COVID, you die. Oh my gosh, yes.
We'll talk about in a second. And then there's the flip side to that of all the countries in the world. To what extent will America tolerate if there is another lockdown? If we know that there was complete compliance for about 4 weeks. And then everybody started, I'm going way back in time here, back in March. Then everybody started getting a little itchy. And then by the time it was May 1st, you had a third of the country saying enough is enough. That's still only a third of the country. That third has not changed. And how many more people have come along, and the idea of this never-ending economic despair. And what's scary about this is when you look around the world. France recorded 10,000 daily coronavirus infections, cases, on Sunday. Hospitalizations for the disease are 6 times below the April peak. The rise in infections has mainly affected young people who are less likely to develop complications from the virus, and there is no strain on French hospitals. However, France's chief scientific advisor on the virus, Dr. Jean-François Desavant,
Oui.
said the low hospitalization and death rates are giving the French people a false sense of security, and nothing is ruled out of this week's cabinet meeting, while President Emmanuel Macron considers a second lockdown in France.
Jesus, for no reason.
For cases, and they closed half of their schools immediately. For cases and no... So, wait, we're going to circle back to Israel because
so scary.
the Israel lockdown is the money shot of this whole thing. But I wanted to give you some context. In America, Midwest faces record COVID-19 surge. States in the Midwest continue to report an increasing number of coronavirus cases. In particular, Iowa, Missouri, North Dakota, and South Dakota added more new cases per capita this week than all of the other states. Spikes have been linked to universities and colleges. On Saturday, Michigan State University strongly recommended that all students self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Young people aren't responding to contact tracers and won't share details about their contacts.
Damn young people.
And then there's all these videos going viral of these kids who a cop showed up to a house party. I forget which, Idaho, Iowa, one of the I states. And the kids are like, yeah, we all have COVID. We're having a party. We're giving it to each other. We know we have, but we don't get. And the cops like horrified or whatever. In these states, remember the headline? Midwest faces record COVID-19 surge. There is a 0% increase in hospitalizations. 0%. But we have to be scared about the surge across the Midwest of America.
This isn't about the surge, but it's just going along with what we're saying. The other horrifying thing to me, and I don't know how people know this. I don't know how they come to this conclusion. We've talked about it before. I just saw it was on a local blog because I was looking up something going on in our area, and they were like, this is so real. Yes. I've known a couple people that have had it, and they have lasting long effects with their lungs. How do you know that? And they're freaked out. And people commenting to that comment were also freaked out. And I'm like, do you even hear yourself? How do you know they're going to have lifelong effects? It hasn't even been, it's been 6 months, whatever it's going to be. There's no way to know that until we get to a certain point that can prove that.
Well, beyond that, I would give it to them. Okay, fine. What's your answer? Because the problem is, we go back to their answer is going to be what? Shut down the country, keep us shut down forever. Blah, 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 blah. There's no goddamn answer.
Right,
the only way
we're
going to figure out about long-term effects of COVID is to have COVID for a long time.
Right,
around us is to learn about it.
Right, I'm like, don't they get that? I don't understand.
I agree with Dawn when she said this is scary because we are literally just we're teetering on that fringe of what's going to happen next. It's almost like all of the people that are in charge are saying that if you don't comply, just you wait. You don't know what we're going to do. We're going to turn this thing around. And with this impending flu season coming up, that I think that's all it's going to take for us to go back into lockdown.
And you remember we talked yesterday too about the feeling seems to be that a lot of people are back teetering on the edge. We had the email from Eddie at NorCal Gun Vault talking about what he's seeing coming into his store, and the emails that we're getting more emails from people that are reaching their breaking point. And depending on where you are, you've been allowed to do more things. And the idea that it would, and remember, we're all sitting here waiting for the Labor Day surge, which is the other weird component to all of this. As you look around the rest of the world and you see France and Israel and Spain, they are having these extraordinary spikes. We're now all sitting here in America wondering, okay, what is going on here? Did we spread it enough to where now you're just going to get it spread in these other rural places? Because we're 8 days now since Labor Day. Where's the spike? And if we do get the spike, which is what everybody thinks is going to happen, well, then everybody can't go inside and dine anymore.
And we hear all these stories about the testing being a mess. I wonder if people are just not going and getting tested as much.
Oh, people aren't.
And there's fewer tests available. So I wonder if that's also affecting all of this from even progressing, because we don't have the numbers yet and we have to wait on those numbers.
There is so much anecdotal evidence out there about people in that 30 to 40% group who are COVIDiots, who are just, they say, I won't get tested. I refuse to get tested.
Right.
I will hide any symptoms if I even have them. And people are starting to wonder, is it the same jerks just getting tested over and over again? The paranoid ones? Like every week they're just going and they're finding somewhere to get tested?
Well, and are the tests still inaccurate? Because there's that. I mean, from the beginning, I feel like we've always been afraid of the cases. But the other justification that would be used to shut things down were the hospitals. And so this is what's scary now, is people are now, they just need to hear cases. Mm-hmm. Because when you say 0% with the hospitals, I don't think that even brings any hope to any people that are afraid, because they're still concentrating on the cases. Well, but if those cases get more, the hospitals could get inundated.
Worldwide. Look, France has been surging in cases for 2 weeks. 10,000 was a record on Sunday. Their hospitalizations, fine. There's no impact on their hospitalization at all whatsoever.
Our leaders no longer need the justification of how many people are in the hospital because of it, because of us still being afraid of cases. So they can literally shut things down just based on cases.
By the way, just to remind you, your own CDC estimates that the death rate from COVID-19 for those under 50 is 0.02%, half of what it is for the flu, and that's just for those with symptoms. They believe, because of the testing issues that we've alluded to, it's actually half of that as well. Remember also that 92.2% of all deaths in America have been people over the age of 55. Then when you add in people between the age of 45 and 54, that's another 5%, which takes us to 97.2% of all COVID deaths in America have been people over the age of 45. You add in the 2% of 35 and older, it's 99.1% of all people in America that have died from COVID have been 35 or older. This is instructive because the surge is coming from young people. Remember also that of all of them, the CDC says 99.28% had underlying health conditions. 0.72% of all deaths in the United States from COVID that they've tracked are purely from COVID. They did not have underlying conditions. That's from your CDC. You can find it, and they're all over the age of 35, but we're talking about shutting down the country elsewhere around the world because young people are spreading the disease. Meanwhile, a minister back in Israel resigned over the nationwide lockdown plans to tackle one of the world's highest coronavirus rates, as it will prevent Jews from attending synagogues over the upcoming festivals of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You start getting into this holiday season and you take church away from people. The Americans went through it with Easter. How would they react with Christmas and things like that?
I was not offended when someone said this. I really hope it's not offensive, but I was talking to a few people yesterday, and they were talking about church, and since you're bringing up all the things they want to do, and one of them suggested, and not in a mean way, they're like, why don't we say we're having a protest so we can gather at the church and be able to do what it is that we do? But we'll just say it's a protest so we don't get in trouble. And
because people don't have that kind of courage. We've been making that joke since Memorial Day. When the George Floyd thing hit, have you seen people throwing a bunch of quote-unquote protests that are actually pool parties forcing the authorities to do something? No. We don't have that. And by the way, it's not the courage. It's the courage for the people who are of one mindset. It's also, there are enough people that think that way.
Yeah.
Israel, by the way, is second only to Bahrain for the world's highest coronavirus infection rate by population. The surge in cases prompted Israel's coronavirus cabinet to announce plans for a nationwide lockdown that will go into force this Friday. Between now and Friday, it's fine. Just infect yourself. Israel, now see if this sounds familiar. Does this sound a lot like California? Israel had initially been widely praised for curbing the spread of coronavirus by imposing a strict lockdown in March. This doesn't sound like California, this next sentence. Children returned to school. Businesses, including bars and restaurants, were reopened along with venues hosting weddings. Foreign visitors are still banned. Masks are mandatory. And yet, Israel has seen a spike in coronavirus cases in past weeks, thus the lockdown that begins Friday. So you've got France is talking about one. Spain is talking about one. Israel is doing one. Yesterday, in Great Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson made it again illegal for people to gather in groups of more than 6. His chief medical advisor, Chris Whitty.
Where do you get that number?
The 7th person has COVID.
I don't even understand that.
Chief medical advisor, Chris Whitty, said that the period between now and spring is going to be quite difficult because that's when respiratory viruses like coronavirus and the flu, as Brandon was alluding to, spread the most. He says this is the medical advisor to the Prime Minister of Great Britain. He didn't think the restrictions would be lifted anytime soon, saying, quote, the Prime Minister says he hopes that some aspects of normal life will return before Christmas, but there are no guarantees, and warned that Christmas is not guaranteed this year. Imagine
what?
You live in a country where you're told it's illegal to gather in groups of more than 6 and it's Christmas or Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving they don't worry about in Great Britain.
Yeah.
These are the things as we look forward to what could happen here.
This is really upsetting. I'm honestly, I was trying to find some sort of fun, playful joke to make here, but this is so disconcerting because this is all a cycle. This is how it started. We just follow these paths and what other countries are doing, and unless and until we can actually have a conversation about living with this virus, we will continue to spiral and do this in the name of public safety.
And I just don't, at this moment in time, because of the cycle and watching each time, I don't have faith that as Americans we're going to rise up. I just don't. I feel like we all get angry, we all get antsy, we all get upset, we're all on edge, but we continue to comply. And I understand there's various reasons for that. People don't want to be fined. They don't want to, some may think they're going to get arrested. They don't want to get in some kind of trouble. And I that is the thing that I think those are the things that are keeping us from doing something. And I just think it would have to be longer. I don't know what it would take for us to finally rise up, but those are legitimate things, especially with businesses. It would have to be every single business agreeing to have business as usual, because then it would be really hard to fine all of them. But how are you going to coordinate that? How are you going to do that?
Well, first you're going to have to convince them.
Right, exactly.
We can't just continually gloss over. There's no indication that there's a majority opinion in this country that feels this way at all. There certainly is not majority willingness. We have to figure out where that thing that I keep alluding to, what Dawn is describing, is happening real slow and with far too few people. How long does that take? Now, let me give you the money shot that I promised you. Israel is locking down on Friday their entire country. We have 7 months now of data for this virus. I went through the death toll in the United States and how it breaks down by age. The mortality rate, like if you're over 80, it's awful. It's like 30%. You get it. It's terrible. Oh. The virus is deadly if you are old and if you are immunocompromised, in that order. So when you take everything into account, the current death rate in America is 2.99%. Puts us around 10th in the whole world. 2.99% of everybody that we believe had COVID has died of it. That number is going down, and remember, it's skewed because that's the whole population, but this is very important. Compare that to Italy, for example. Theirs is 12.5% still to this day.
Oh, wow.
For the whole population. America's mortality rate, 2.9%. Italy's 12.5%. Israel, 0.7.
What?
Israel's death rate is 0.7.
What are they doing? Why? Why is this happening?
They've had a total of just over 1,000 deaths. And because of this surge in cases,
I don't understand.
they are shutting down. And what's instructive, and a lot of you, I don't mean this condescending at all. The reason I choose the countries that I did, they all mirror America. As close as you can get to the way that they run, there's vast differences, do not misunderstand me. But if you were to do a civics lesson with somebody and say, find the 10 countries in the world that are closest to America in terms of freedoms, governance, their ideals, their values, their morals, Great Britain, Israel, and France would all be on that list. Maybe not Spain. That's the only other country I mentioned. Right. Maybe Australia instead. Yeah. But that's what's scary about this in terms of the societal compliance and such. So
I don't even know what to say to that. That's just beyond shocking. I don't understand.
This is why I wanted to get this out of the way. So also so that Brandon won't be in his funk the entire show. Because when I got Jordan's email, I thought, okay, well, this all ties in. We'll do a quick update from yesterday's show, and then we're going to go on. We're going to do the show. We'll loop back to this later. Maybe we'll have fun, whatever. But when I went home and did 2 hours of research on this yesterday, what you are experiencing right now, Dawn, is what I felt. My eyes jumped out of my skull when I put it all together and saw their death rate and read everything was going on. I thought, all right, we'll just throw it out there and then we'll move along with the day.
I really would like that explanation. I don't know why that.
No, you wouldn't.
I don't know why.
There isn't one.
There isn't one.
Hat? Do you know what? I'm curious. Right. Here's the deal. I'm curious. What the what are they called in Israel? The leader, the president,
the prime minister.
Okay,
who, by the way, is like attached at the hip to President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I as a Christian, I love Israel. They're God's chosen people. But I mean, just beside that, I want like when you have that's your number. How are you justifying this? Do you even mention it? Right, like, do you even mention that, or is it not mentioned?
We already covered it. Because it's the same mentality as where we all started with this. They will keep that death rate down by locking everybody up again. And then they'll let them all out and people will get infected again. And then they'll lock them all down and then they'll let them all out and people will get infected again. And on and on and on it will go. And they don't understand. So maybe what the new plan for the rest of the world is, we're sitting here espousing living with the virus. The rest of the world is hiding from the virus until there's a vaccine. Because that's the only goddamn thing that's going to ever let anybody get out of their houses if this is going to be the mentality. And we're just going to have to sit around and wait and see if we're going to get another surge.